Right. Hello, it's very nice to meet you. Who are you?
Well, I'm Nicole Stott, and I'm now an artist, and I'm a retired astronaut. But I think more than all of that, I'm a mom who loves her son and hopes that all this stuff I'm doing as an artist and astronaut will help him and his future.
What kind of world do you want, given all your experience and seeing the Earth from space?
Well, I think I want a world. Actually, I know I want a world where everyone appreciates this place that we live, this planet that we have, as one world, as the place where all of us live. And by that I mean appreciates the earth itself, but also that we all have to get along to take care of it and take care of each other.
Could you explain what the overview effect is and a little bit about the person, the space philosopher who coined the phrase?
Yeah, the overview effect, it's a really wonderful concept, idea, I guess, about how people and Frank White, the gentleman that coined that term, awesome guy, very thoughtful man. I think he's looking at it in particular from the perspective of astronauts in space, people who have traveled to space and have had the opportunity to see our planet from that vantage point. And I think it's such a wonderful thing to think about, because I think regardless of whether you go to space or you go someplace new, perhaps in an airplane, or drive somewhere that you haven't been before, when you look at things and experience them from a different perspective, it opens up a whole new world for you. It opens up whole new opportunities for you, and I think it helps you make a connection with people in places that you might not otherwise. And so this idea of the overview effect from space, I mean, it's our grandest way to look at where we live and who we are. And, hopefully we'll continue to be able to look at it from other, other platforms as well. But it goes back to that whole philosophy of spaceship Earth. We're all traveling in space together on this beautiful planet. And how do we take care of each other?
If you were given the choice to take one or a number of people to space with a view to changing their perspectives so that the people on Earth and the planet Earth would benefit from their perspective being changed, who would you take?
I think the easy answer for that certainly is if we could get our world leaders together in a place where they could see the earth from that perspective. I think it would be such an awe-inspiring thing for them. It would be that overview effect. It would be this ability to separate from your planet and connect to it in a way that you can't from any other place. But I think the thing that would be interesting to do would be to take not only those world leaders, but to bring some children along with them, so that they could witness. I mean, I get goosebumps on my arms just thinking about it, so that they could witness this experience through those children's eyes as well, and experience that together in a way that allows them to see it from their high vantage point, which is not just in that place in space, but their responsibility to all of us here on Earth, and experience that through the eyes of these children as well, who are looking at it, I think, very innocently. And that, I think, would be a wonderful thing for our world leaders to share, to see it through kids' eyes and through their own eyes as well at the same time.
I have a question from Alexander Kashkar Behrang. He is the next leading actor on the Nordic noir series The Bridge, shown in 160 countries worldwide. And he would like to ask, how did it make you feel? And of course this relates very much to the overview effect, but can you explain to us how it physically and emotionally made you feel for the first time looking out of the window? And what was the first thing you saw down there? Where were you passing over?
It's funny because I think that question, it always kind of comes as the first time, the first time you looked out the window. And what I can tell you is every time you look out the window, there's something surprising and awesome. I mean, totally legit to use the word awesome with respect to these visual feelings, the physical visual sense you get from it, the emotional kind of spiritual sense that comes from it. And it happens every time you look out the window, regardless of whether you're looking out into deep space or at the planet or at one of your crewmates crawling along the bottom of the space station. There's something about it that makes you very easily, I think, recognize that you've been separated from Earth in a way that is very special. You've been all this power of a launch that takes to get you out of this gravity and into space, to have that view is pretty incredible. And then you realize that you're blessed to be there. And now you're seeing these things, and it's like it becomes a part of you. I mean, it really is. I think it's why we send people to space. It's why we send people to do these things, because through our own eyes, it becomes part of us. And I honestly don't remember what the first thing I saw through the window was, other than it was glowing, and it was daytime on the Earth. When I had the chance to get up and actually look through the window, it was daytime. The planet just glows, and it glows with all of those colors you think about for Earth. But just like a beautifully painted light bulb, almost just alive. Even it's moving, it's dynamic, and I think I was so struck by it. I honestly, I don't remember where I was looking at, but I felt that way every time I looked out the window. There was something about it that touched me, that reinforced, I think, what I feel is that our planet and who we are and our place on it is a very significant thing too. We might be this tiny little planet in the grand scheme of the universe, but I don't think that makes us insignificant. I think it reinforces our significance, actually.
One of the ways in which you have tried to bring this experience alive, convey this experience to people on Earth, is to paint. You're the first person to paint in space. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my whole thing right now is, how do I use artwork and painting in what I think is a unique way to try and share that experience. And when I talk about sharing the experience, I mean it from both the like awareness for people. If I can inspire this awareness in people, that they even realize that we have a space station and that we have had people living continuously in space for the past 16 years, circling our planet every 90 minutes, doing things off of the Earth for Earth, for the benefit of everybody living here. And then the other side of that is to increase the awareness. I call it Earth appreciation, I guess, that we as a people understand this place we have on this beautiful planet. And so painting in space was awesome. It was really, really fun. I thought it was going to be really difficult to do. I brought up a watercolor kit with me. And at the time, I didn't know I was the only person who had painted in space. It was really kind of surprising to me to find that out. But there are some differences in how you have to manage with the paint and the water, and all of these things are going to float around if you don't take care of them. But actually, like everything in space, part of the whole adventure is that it's a little bit different than, the way life is here on Earth. And, so things as simple as like squirting out water to get it onto your paintbrush. I could squirt out the tiniest little, ball of water from a drink bag and then stick the paintbrush into it, and the paintbrush would just it would just suck the water into the brush because surface tension, and there's no gravity, and it just behaves differently. And then mix it in the paint, and then it's like the paper it's like it was inviting it in, it's just the way the paint would move from the brush onto the paper was really, really cool. And I think when I was figuring out what I wanted to do after the astronaut office and how I would best share that experience, the art and the painting were my unique way to do that.
You've also been involved in other initiatives to bring alive the space experience to people on the planet. You were involved in the early days of Fragile Oasis and also the first tweet up from space. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think, of those two things, Fragile Oasis is very much, about this idea of how we share that perspective from space and, this awareness of this fragile place that we live. I think when we look around us just day to day, we don't necessarily get a sense of how fragile our environment is, our atmosphere is, and, even relationships between people. There's a fragile nature to that, and we have to take care of it. And the other was Fragile Oasis, and the first tweet up.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun. That was interesting because at the time, now on the space station they have live
internet now, don't they? It's very different.
So
Yes.
Each group, or if they choose to, can just tweet
Yes.
throughout the day beautiful pictures or some of their experience that they're having. Back in the olden days, 2009, we didn't have that. We had a way to, and I was tweeting then, but it was much more cumbersome. I would come up with a couple different things, some pictures, I'd send them down to my person on the ground, and she would very kindly put them together and then tweet them out. And everybody knew I wasn't doing it directly myself. But we did have the opportunity on board to do a live connection with a group of people on the ground who were social media fans. And it was the first tweet up from space. And it was cool. It was cool to actually speak with these people that are doing kind of the electronic version of communication. And they were all interested in the experience itself, but I think more importantly, how they could share it, from an education standpoint. And that was really neat to know that they were going to go and take this experience they were having with us through the tweet up and, spread the word to kids in their classrooms or through different organizations that were educational outreach kinds of things. So really, really fun. Jeff Williams and I got to do that together in space.
Are there any other ways in which that have not really fully been explored yet that could be used to convey this experience to others, short of virtual reality? I'm just thinking of David Attenborough has just been part of a series called Planet Earth 2. And It received record viewership. 40%, over 40% of the British viewing public tuned in to this.
Yeah,
and it's partly David Attenborough's personality, because he gives us all a sense of wonder at the world and the things on it. But it was also the fact that the cameras, from a technological point of view, were able to get up really close to the animals so that we felt that we were in their world. Just wondering whether you feel there's scope to draw the public in more.
I do, and I think there are different mechanisms out there that different people and different organizations are starting to explore to do that. I get questions almost every day about, do I want to participate in an interview, or do I want to, something like this I think is huge, to open up this world of spaceflight, but bigger than the world of spaceflight is, what are we getting from it? How are we changing our perspectives as human beings on where we live and how we should take care of this place and each other, but also how we explore further off the planet, which to me is all about bringing back an understanding, again, to improve life on Earth. And if we can take that, like that visual perspective that we get from space, and the cameras, really, like you said, the cameras are getting so much better at capturing what our eyes see when we're up there. And if we can look at it from that view and then, kind of focus in on particular places and the things that are going on with the planet itself and the people there, and increase that awareness, I think it's going to be a really beautiful thing. I think it's going to come back to that. How do we recognize as a population that we all live in this same place, on this same place together? And we're not, even if we're on the other side of the planet from each other, we're not that far, far away from each other. And whether it's through VR or shows like David Attenborough's, which I think if they twisted that a little bit to look at it from the space, kind of the space vantage point, and then brought it down to Earth even more, it just would be, like we talked earlier, that separation from the planet and the view that you get, and then bring you back home to where you live and belong. It helps make a connection in a very powerful way.
You've made some really powerful speeches and given some really powerful talks to that effect. One of which was your glass floor talk at TED. Could you explain a little bit about what you spoke about?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because when I was asked to do that presentation, it was from the standpoint of being a woman in a male-dominated field and having studied in school in a male-dominated field. And the question to me really was, what challenges did I have to overcome? How did I feel like I was, maybe being held back in what I was doing? And I struggle with that because, and maybe I'm unique in this, but I see it around me too, is that I think, for me, I grew up in a family that never told me anything was impossible. I never heard that, and I was interested in doing some different kinds of things. And nobody ever told me I couldn't do something because I was a girl or because I wasn't smart enough or whatever. And I think that had a huge impact on the opportunities that opened up for me. Certainly people believing in me, the mentor idea was big for me. So in that presentation, I tried to focus more on where I saw in my life that opportunities came from versus things that held me back. And I love it when I speak to young women, young kids in general, about that, because I think if they're able to focus on what they enjoy, find people that share that same kind of passion, and look for the opportunities that come from that versus getting bogged down in the things that are perhaps preventing them from doing something, it just becomes such a better experience. And so for me, there's always just been this idea of this glass ceiling for women. Like, we can only get so far. We keep hitting this glass ceiling. And I felt like along the way, I've been given opportunities to just spring off of something, to look at another job or a different path within my education or career, or even the things I enjoyed doing outside of work and school, that I was always looking for the way to expand on it and to do the next thing versus worrying about what might hold me back. I don't know. That's a long way of saying I think that I there's kind of this launching idea always. How do I take advantage of the people around me, the experience around me, the opportunities around me to do something that's new and different and in line with what I enjoy.
Mike Mongo, the author of the Astronaut Manual and also board director of SEDS, would be really interested in hearing about the influence of mentors in your life and your opinion of the necessity of kids and young adults to have mentors, and whether you mentor anybody.
Yeah, I think it's huge. As my son would say, it's ginormous. It's a big part of, for me, it was a very big part of how those opportunities came about. And it wasn't because anybody handed me anything, I don't think. I had to work for what I did, but it was because there were people in my life, I think, that saw things in me that I might not have appreciated myself if they hadn't expressed it to me. For example, later in life, um, I never thought that I could be an astronaut. I never thought that
Why
would be a
not?
possible. Well, I mean, I never thought. I looked at these people and I thought, why would anything I've done be what they would want to select in someone to be an astronaut? It's not because anybody told me I couldn't do it. I mean, I watched the first moon landing, the first moonwalk, and I mean, I was a kid, but I thought, wow, that's really cool. And I loved it. I have memory of my parents, taking me outside and pointing at the moon and saying, that's where those guys are. They're walking around up there. How cool that was, how almost unbelievable it was. And I think that looking at things like that made me believe that things were possible, but I didn't attach a reality factor to, oh, that's something I could potentially do. Um, but later in life, I had people that encouraged me, when I would ask them about it, encouraged me to just take that step to apply. And it sounds so simple. It's like, oh yeah, just fill out the application. But if you don't have enough confidence in yourself to even pick up the pen, at the time you had to pick up a pen and fill out the paper, to do that, it's amazing how much you can hold yourself back from.
You've
Yeah,
explained.
you know.
You've explained in a few discussions that it took quite a while for you to apply.
It did, yeah. I saw that moonwalk. I was in awe of it and appreciated it. But for me, I took more of a path that was based on, and I would definitely say my parents were mentors to me. My dad shared his passion for flying with me, which I think had a huge influence on the path I chose. And but it really was more about flying and how things fly that kind of laid out my path for school and wanting to work for NASA, because if you want to know how things fly, why would you not want to know how spaceships fly? Whether you're flying them on or not, why would you not want to know how spaceships fly? And so that was the, kind of the lure for me, and the excitement for me was about that, and about, I think, what we're doing with that. We fly to space. We don't just fly to space because it's fun. I mean, we fly to space because we're trying to improve life here on Earth for everyone. We're looking at how we can, ensure life goes on for humanity. That's a big deal to me. But I was working at Kennedy Space Center, and it probably wasn't until like 9 or 10 years after working at Kennedy Space Center and seeing other astronauts come through and watching what they did 99% of their time, which was not flying in space. And I started thinking, maybe I could do something like this. But it was really only based on the conversations with the people that I did consider to be mentors that pushed me to the point of picking up the pen and filling out the application. And I think that along the way in life, there were other mentors that at the time I didn't even realize were those people. My biology teacher in high school.
Can you remember their names?
Yeah, that's Mrs. Wilcox and Mrs. Steele. Actually, there were two in high school that, for me, allowed me to see that I had some capability in science. I mean, that I could do science. I could be successful in school with science, and to have that visual of two women doing that. And at the time, I don't even think that really impacted me. I don't even think I realized that was part of the messaging to me, was that I was seeing two very successful women as teachers encouraging me to follow where I could be successful with science. There was another teacher in high school, Mrs. Ransom, who taught an aeronautics class. And I mean, to me, it was like, first of all, I hung out at the airport with my family, flying and things. So that aviation thing was in the blood already. But to have the opportunity in high school to take a class that had to do with something like flying versus math or reading or, history and that kind of thing, how cool was that? And I didn't realize at the time how much of an impact it was having on me. And of course, later in college with, several of the professors that I had, the first time I ever asked about an astronaut application was when I was going to school at Embry-Riddle, and one of my professors actually mailed away for it and got it for me. And I still have it in an envelope here. And it was just like, wow, this is really cool. And I, at the time, didn't even think I should even think about filling it out. And these people that are in your life and share things with you about yourself that you might not appreciate on your own. And it's really important to pay attention to them.
What sort of child were you? Did you have, were you confident? I mean, you described earlier that you needed a little bit of a push, quite a bit of encouragement to apply to be an astronaut. Is there part of you that still is sometimes unsure?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And does that go back to childhood?
Yeah, but I don't think I mean, I was a little, I look at my son now who has such confidence with groups of people and new places. And, for example, we'll be at the beach as a family and, nobody else that we know is there, but he'll very confidently go off and start building sandcastles with some other kid down the beach, or playing paddleball in the water with somebody. And I'm like, I think about it, I'm like, I never would have done that as a kid. I would have sat by my mom and waited for her to, take me out in the water and introduce me. I never would have done that as a kid. And it's not because of anything that, was purposefully holding me back. I think it was just me. And so, yeah, I think now even I have in this next adventure I'm going through now with the art and the messaging and how I put myself out there. I sometimes struggle with, well, why would anybody want to even talk to me or, hear about my experience?
And do you then force yourself to do it?
I do I think you have to. I think you have to sometimes. But I'm really thankful. I have, my husband who is wonderful and has been there, thank goodness for my family and the support. All that goes along with training and flying in space is there's a lot of burden on your family in that. And so very thankful for their support. And even today we were having the conversation about, he'll say to me, okay, Nicole, you need to take the time to paint. You need to take the time to write. I mean, I've got a couple book ideas that I really think people would enjoy reading about.
Oh.
But it's, getting to that stage of actually putting it down and doing it and getting it out there. And he's like, you just need to do it. And I'm so thankful for his encouragement, because when I get into it and do it, I'm so happy about it. And so
you love creating.
I do, absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a little perfectionist in me too that worries that, wow, maybe somebody won't like it. But in the end, it's about, I think it's about there's a spiritual side to it. There's a self, and I don't think it's selfish, but I think it's an internal kind of joy that comes from doing it, and then hoping that somebody else will appreciate it in a way that opens up a new world for them too.
Can you tell us a little bit about your creations? You painted a string of islands off Venezuela, I think.
I did. I have that painting here. Let me grab it.
Oh, do you? Oh, fantastic.
I have. So, and I painted this as a subject a couple times, but yes. This is the one. It's going to be hard. Let me see if I can shut the window a little bit. So it's a little hard to see because of the blinds behind me reflecting on it. But
beautiful. And you painted that from space.
So this was the one I did in space, and it's a watercolor, and it's a chain of islands called Las Rocas, and on the northern coast of Venezuela. It was really, really beautiful, and it's been really has been kind of an inspiration piece for a number of other things I've done. I don't have any more of them here. They're all they're all someplace else, but I've done larger format versions of that, of that image, and I've started doing some, sunrise, sunset paintings, because that to me, the sunrise and the sunset they just remind me of what it was like to be in space, because, you're traveling around the planet every 90 minutes. So, 17,500 miles an hour. And so every 45 minutes you get this sunrise or sunset. And so when you look out the window, you're probably likely going to see one of those things. And it just reminds me of being in space. And so I've tried to start painting some of those. I do have one, let me show you. A painting that it's very different. So it's more, like,
oh my goodness, so that really is very different.
At the launch pad. And I did it because it was a commission piece.
Yes.
That somebody just reached out to me, and that was Discovery on the launch pad right before we launched on STS-133. And it's a picture he had taken himself. And he had his own special memories about, watching the launch and being there for the launch and stuff. And so he wanted me to paint that for him. And today I'm going to put it in the mail and actually send it to him finally. But that kind of thing too, yeah.
So if I want to buy a piece of this art, or anybody listening and watching wants to buy some of this beautiful art, how do they find it online?
Well, I'm at the point of actually getting ready to put an online sales gallery. But right now they can go to my website, which is www.theartisticastronaut.com. And there is a gallery there where they can get an idea of the kinds of things I've done. And I will be adding some more pieces to that. But at this point, to just reach out to me via the contact email that's on the website, and we can talk from there. Yeah.
I notice quite a bit of space memorabilia in the background. Can you show us some of that?
Yeah, let's see. What do we have? Here, hold one moment. Let me just take these out. We'll bring into view this guy.
That's fine. That's my goodness.
Sorry about that. I'm not mobile
here.
No
problem.
All right.
This is great.
So here I brought this over. So this is a print of the wave of the watercolor.
Brilliant.
So it's just a little print out of it because it doesn't glare as much. Let's see. This is funny. People always see this in the background, and I love it because it's my hand, and I did not miss my calling as a hand model. That's for sure. There's nothing going on there. But this was a mold that was done of my hand to make my spacesuit gloves for spacewalking. And so I just love it. The folks at ILC Dover, the company that make our spacesuits, they very kindly, they could just throw this out, and they realized that it's something that might be special to us, and so they mount it up like a little sculpture and give it to you. So really, really fun. And let's see. So I have, boards of mission patches that we have that were hung on the walls of our crew quarters when we were getting ready to launch.
From your 2 space missions.
So yeah, and it's funny because I had 2 space missions, but I think I have 5 patches because on the first flight I went up on a space shuttle mission, and then I crossed over 2 expeditions on station, and then came home on a space shuttle mission, and then I flew on the shuttle again. So there's a patch for each of those.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and it's really, it's fun, and it's neat because it represents, I think, some of the tradition that has gone along with, as a crew and the space flight. And it's so hard to remember. To remember a lot of what you experienced as part of,
Yes.
And so things like this that I think connect you to the people that you shared it with are really, really important. And then that drives out the special memories. But I think, like everything, it really is about the people that you get to share the experience with. And so, so I love stuff like this.
And it wasn't a brief amount of time in space for you. I mean, one of the missions was for 3 months, wasn't it, at the International Space Station?
Yeah, my first flight was a little over 3 months, and it was too short, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think I could have easily done 3 more months. It's so cool up there. And I think the one thing that is missing for me, people ask me what was the most difficult thing, the most challenging thing. And I think for me, it was just not having my family there.
Yes.
And knowing, and it's not like this is anything different than, actually it's a lot easier, I think, than people on military deployments and stuff where they're separated from their families. But in a place where you know that your husband and your son or your mom and your sisters would love to be there too, it's really difficult when you
yes,
when they can't be there to share it, And we're talking about this, and you can tell it's difficult to really express what it was like, I watch videos or TV now with my colleagues and my friends that are up there floating around in space and doing really important work. And I look at them and it just looks so natural to me to see the way they move and the things they're doing. But to try to explain how it felt to just fly, to be floating.
Incredible. And you actually went on a spacewalk. Was it a six hour or more spacewalk?
Yeah, and that, I wish I could have done another one, actually.
Really?
Because, when you talk about, the whole experience of flying in space is surreal, for sure. But that is probably the surrealist, if that's a word, I'm not sure. But, because it's 6.5 hours of just action-packed. You're just having to work very efficiently to get all the tasks done. But at the same time, there is the most beautiful distraction below you, this planet that is just like out your visor. You're like, I just want to stop and just look at that and not do any work out here. And of course, you're also so engaged, so aware of, this diligence that you need to have to make sure you're tethered, to make sure your tools are on you properly, to make sure you're handling everything correctly, that you know what's going on with your crewmate that's out there. The situational awareness that is like no other place.
Yes, I bet you have to be concentrating. What were you actually doing out there? What was the purpose of the spacewalk? What was the work that you were doing for over 6 hours?
Okay, so we had a mix of things we were doing. Some of it was maintenance on the space station, things that needed to be repaired. We did a removal of a big box that was on the station. It was an ammonia tank that we use for the radiator system, but it's this big box that we had to remove and then get down into the payload bay of the space shuttle for it to come home. And then we also removed a big payload, like a piece of science equipment that was on the outside of the space station. And that was put back into the space shuttle to come home too. And so that was the science part of it. But the neat thing about that from like a crew member standpoint was, the big robotic arm that we have, the big white crane on the station. So I got to pull this big box off of the space station, which on the ground would weigh about 800 pounds, and hang on to this box while I was strapped into the end of the big robotic arm. And then for like 25 minutes, I'm holding this box on the end of this arm as it moved from the station down and took me down into the payload bay of the space shuttle. And it was like I was standing still holding this box, and everything else was moving around me. The Earth came up into view, the space shuttle came up into view as the station moved out of view. It was the most surreal thing to think about. Okay, first of all, I'm hanging on to an 800-pound box. How and where else can that happen? That's just like I could just do anything with it that I wanted to. And to be just moving through space so peacefully for 25 minutes. And to be literally, I think, the farthest person from our planet, for those 25 minutes. I think about it now, and it just almost doesn't seem like that could be something I could have done, And we did it successfully. I'm like, woo, we actually did what we were out there to do. And so a mix of science and maintenance and assembly activities on the station. And it's 6.5 hours. It goes by very quickly. Again, goes by very quickly. Yeah.
What was your described role on both of those missions? I mean, obviously your background is in engineering, but what was your purpose?
Well, we're at the stage right now where, unfortunately, we can't send a medical doctor, an electrician, the plumber, the scientist. We can't send all of those different people up to have those particular roles. So as an astronaut these days, it's really, really fun because you are essentially jack of all trades. You have to be able to maintain the systems on the space station. You have to be able to interact and perform all the science activities that are going on. You have to be able to fly the robotic arm and suit up and go out and do a spacewalk and be prepared to handle emergencies if they happen on board. And it's really very cool because while you were trained and had this work experience before that in a particular area, it's interesting how you can do so many different things and enjoy it and be successful at it. And that's what I love talking to kids about is that, you're going to find something that you really enjoy doing. It's going to be the thing that helps you choose what you want to study at school or the kind of job you want to have and the hobbies you want to have. But all of those things, if you really enjoy doing them, will help you be prepared to do so many other things too, and things that you might not have ever imagined you could ever possibly do. And I think that's pretty neat. I think it's pretty neat.
You must have met some incredible people during the course of your career at NASA. You were there for over 23 years. Obviously astronauts, I mean, that goes without, fellow astronauts, that goes without saying. But who would you most like to meet now? And what would you like to ask them?
Well, I am on the verge of crying with that question because for me, and it might seem like a weird one, but my dad, who was kind of the flying influence in my life, passed away in a small airplane crash, like the week before my 16th birthday.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Well, thank you. And but all of these things that I've had the opportunity to do, he would love it. He would love all of it. And I think, when I think about my mom and my sisters watching the launch, I mean, for me, I imagine him being there too, because it would have been such a special thing for him. And I would just love the opportunity for, as a family, for us to be able to have a conversation right now with my dad, about all of this stuff that's going on. And, and not just in my life, but with my mom and my sisters and their families. And, because each one of us has, something that we got from him, that encouraged us in the lives that we have right now. And, for my son to be able to meet him and see why I would have been influenced the way I am, and for my husband to be able to meet him. I know I already know him, but, it would be nice to meet him again and have that kind of family experience to share. Yeah.
Are you religious?
I am. I definitely am. I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I reinforce that with my son. My husband and I do that in our family. We are faithful people, if that's a way to say it. I think that the opportunity I've had to see Earth from space, to experience the things I've had. It's weird. It's not something I think that would have made me believe in God if I hadn't already. I don't think that's it. I think that I was very fortunate to already have that sense within me and just be in awe of what I was experiencing around me. To see some of that wonder that it's okay if we can't explain everything. In
the overview film, one of the things you say when you're talking about the awe that you experienced from space, looking down at Earth, was spaceship Earth hanging there in exactly the right position in relation to the sun for us to exist as a planet, for us as human beings to be alive. Was that a religious comment?
I think I embedded in it. Definitely, it is, and I think it comes back to this idea of significance and purpose as human beings. And before I flew in space, I remember, I would listen. I would talk to people that had flown before me about their experiences. I listened to commentary from some of the Apollo astronauts who, they saw the whole Earth, like, that blue marble, experience that, from station, we don't get that. But, and one of the people, I can't remember who it was, used the word insignificant in their description of what they felt when they saw the planet. And I remember thinking, wow, I hope what they really meant was humbled and in awe, because insignificant to me has just this negative connotation to it. And talking to them later in life, they said no, they didn't mean anything negative by it at all. It's just when you think about this grand universe and this tiny little planet, they're size-wise, there may be an insignificance associated with it. But for me, I was so pleased that I could look out the window and see Earth, and that awe, I think reinforces the significance of who and where and how we are. And I don't think it's by chance that this planet is this distance from the sun, and that we are on it, living here, and that it takes care of us the way it does. I don't think that's by chance. And I think there's maybe a reason why we haven't found something else like, exactly like it yet. And I look forward to the day that we find life on some other planet, because I think we will. I don't know if it'll be like us. I'm not sure. It may be microscopic, who knows? That's probably more likely. But even if we didn't, I think that's okay. I mean, I really think it's okay. I think that, again, just says, hey, there's something really very special about who we are and why we're here. And a lot of it might just come down to these relationships that we have with people that we care about, and developing more of those, so that as people on this planet, we take care of everyone and each other.
Edgar Mitchell, thank you, Apollo astronaut, believed that we're all stardust, but he also had some other views. I was wondering your opinion of those. He spoke about UFOs, and I just wondered what your opinion of that is.
Yeah, I mean, I totally respect that view, and I think that we just don't know, and that's okay. And I never experienced anything that said to me, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" And that I would wonder if that was a UFO in the sense of what people think about with respect to UFOs. But I think I saw things that were surprising to me every day when I looked out the window. And, things that were unexplained to me at first because I didn't know what they were. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, that's a shooting star below me. I'm like, you just don't think about seeing something like that. You're so used to looking up to seeing something like that when you see it below you, it's like, what is that? And then you have to have your crewmate tell you, oh, well, that's just a shooting star down below you. And then you realize, wow, I should be happy that I'm seeing it that way, because that means it's not hitting my spaceship and stuff. But, stuff like that, or discovering new things about Earth, whether it's just the geography of the planet or how it looks, and, where you're from, and seeing it from that perspective is sometimes unexpected and surprising. And I think those are good things to experience as well.
You brought some other memorabilia to the table. Maybe you could take us through the remainder of them.
Well, I have
and
this
explain
one.
what they are.
So this is a little flat version of some spacesuit art, a spacesuit art project that I've been involved with, and this is the suit called Hope.
Oh, is this in aid of children's cancer awareness?
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, we're not doing it justice here with this little flat version of it because it's just stunning. And in person, it is just stunning. And each of these little patches on this suit are a separate little fabric canvas that was painted by a child in cancer treatment at one of the local hospitals in Houston. And there's an artist there, Ian Sion, he's the artistic genius actually behind this project. And they invited me to participate, which I'm very thankful for. But this whole suit is quilted together from those individual paintings. And the same people that did this hand, ILC Dover, they build our spacesuits, and they donated the time to quilt together all of these individual canvases into this suit. And so we have this one suit called Hope. We have a second suit that is a flight suit version that is on the space station right now. And the kids painted right on that suit. And we were able to package it up really small. And the ISS program very, very thankfully sent that to the space station. And
Fantastic.
Kate Rubens. Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, Kate Rubens, one of the astronauts that was on board at the time, was able to wear the suit. And we had a live video conference with her with some of the kids that had painted on it. And I mean, it was like an art exhibit in space to see her floating on the space station in this really colorful suit. And now we have a third version of the suit that Ian and I traveled to all of the space station partner countries, to the headquarter cities, and we painted with kids in the hospitals there, along with astronauts and cosmonauts from those places. And we gathered all of that artwork. And there's a third suit that's going to be similar to this with a little bit different pattern. We brought all the artwork back, and ILC Dover is quilting that together into a third suit called Unity. And we're really hoping that these three suits, they bring together the space and the art in a way that was very positive for these kids and their families and for us as well. But I think there's some momentum behind it that will allow us to do some more good with them in terms of increasing awareness for pediatric cancer, maybe actually doing some meaningful fundraising for research and activities associated with art and healing, art and science on the space station that could, benefit these kids as well. So,
is there a fundraising page?
There is not yet. We are working on that. That's our next step, and I will certainly share that with you as soon as I have it. We're working on that now, and hoping that we can get something in place very soon, because we get asked all the time about how can people help us with this, and it's a really great thing. And I hope you can see it in person sometime, because
I'd love to.
Another case of the picture doesn't do it justice, Yeah. And then I think I brought over, what else did I bring over? I brought over this, this is a large kind of montage. If I hold it back here, it's probably better, that the Spacewalking team put together for me. And so it has the patches off of my suit that I wore in space, the flag and the little stripes, and then it has, a picture from the spacewalk on here. And it was just kind of a thank you from the team to me for not screwing up, I guess, for, getting the job done. But again, I think it's another one of those reminders of, the people that were involved with the whole experience, which is what makes it anyway. Yeah.
It's taken 15 nations cooperation to create the International Space Station. As a final message from you to the 15 nations and all the other nations not involved to create another world, what would you say to them?
Well, thank you,
To
first
create
of
a
all.
better world.
Thank you, I think would be a message, first of all, to these countries and the visionaries really that saw the power that could come from, working together this way, very peacefully, very successfully, in terms of relationships and also from the technology standpoint, building something like we've never built before and doing that in space, not even doing it down here on it, but doing it in space. And I think that historically, perhaps when we look back at the space station program, we're going to look at it as an example of how we work together globally to do something good. And I think it is the most beautiful example that we have right now of how we could be working together here on Earth to do things for the benefit of everyone. But also as we look at, going back to the moon, going on to Mars, learning more off our planet to help us improve life here, we've got to use the station as the example of how to do that. And I think the more we do that, the more we can bring in these other countries too that didn't have the opportunity to participate so far and, kind of wrap the planet in it almost in a way to behave and operate down here on Earth as, on that spaceship Earth that you mentioned, and then and how we explore further off the planet as well. Yeah.
Nicole Stott, former astronaut and artist, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute privilege.
Really an honor for me too. I really appreciate the interest. So happy to do it again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.